Something is happening right now in the Gulf of Mexico, and if you are not paying attention, you are already behind. This is not a drill. This is not a slow-moving weather story that gives you days to prepare. This is a storm that is moving faster than the forecasts predicted, hitting harder than the models expected, and escalating in ways that even seasoned meteorologists are watching with serious concern. Tropical Storm Arthur, the very first named storm of the 2026 Atlantic hurricane season, has arrived, and it has arrived with a statement. Right now, as you are watching this, communities along the Gulf Coast are already feeling the fury of the system, and the worst, I need you to hear this clearly, the worst is still coming. Let's talk about what is actually happening, because the numbers alone should stop you cold. Galveston, Texas already recorded wind gusts hitting 60 miles per hour from this storm. 60. And Arthur has not even fully made landfall yet. That is the kind of opening move that tells you everything you need to know about what kind of storm this is going to be. This is not a system that is going to politely announce itself, tap gently on your door, and wait for you to invite it in. Arthur is kicking the door down. And what comes through that door next is a combination of catastrophic flooding, dangerous tornado potential, damaging straight-line winds, and a track that is going to drag misery across an enormous stretch of the southeastern United States over the next several days. Now, here's the part that separates this storm from what you might be used to seeing. Most tropical systems, they peak at landfall, they come in hot, they hit the coast, they weaken, and the story starts winding down. Arthur is doing the exact opposite. The atmospheric setup behind this storm is actually going to allow it to strengthen after it moves inland. Let me say that one more time because it matters. This storm is expected to get stronger overland. That is not normal. That is not what people are prepared for. And that is exactly why you need to understand what is driving the system before you make any decisions about your safety over the next 48 to 72 hours. High up in the atmosphere, about 200 millibars, which is roughly where commercial jets cruise, there is a phenomenon happening called upper-level divergence. Picture the air at that extreme altitude literally spreading apart, pulling away from itself, creating a massive void. Now, nature cannot tolerate a void. The atmosphere is always trying to restore balance, always trying to fill in what is missing. So when that air spreads apart way up high, the atmosphere responds by pulling air upward from the surface to fill the gap. That rising motion is rocket fuel for a storm. It deepens the low pressure, it increases the spin, it intensifies the rainfall. And right now, that upper-level divergence is positioned almost perfectly over the track that Arthur is expected to take as it pushes through Georgia and into the Carolinas. The European Weather Model, one of the most respected and accurate forecast tools on the planet, identified this setup days ago, and it has not budged from that forecast. Other models are now catching up. The atmosphere is telling a very clear and very alarming story, and the models are finally all reading the same page. So let us walk through exactly what is going to unfold over the next several days, because this is not a one-day event. This is a multi-day, multi-state catastrophe in the making, and every single state in Arthur's path needs to be on high alert right now. Tonight, the storm is closing in on the Louisiana coastline. The center of circulation has been tracking near Houston and Bay City, drifting toward the Galveston area. But the most dangerous and most active part of this storm, the side that is absolutely loaded with moisture and convective energy, is sitting to the south and east of that center. That is where the heaviest rain bands are. That is where the strongest storms are organizing. And that is the part of Arthur that is going to march directly through the Gulf Coast states over the coming hours. Tropical storm force wind gusts are already spreading on shore across southern Louisiana tonight, and scattered heavy downpours are going to be working through southern Alabama, southern Mississippi, and into the Florida panhandle as the evening progresses. If you live in any of those areas and you have not checked your emergency supplies, you have not identified your local shelter options, and you have not programmed weather alerts onto your phone, please stop what you're doing right now and handle that before you go any further. Tomorrow morning is when this storm truly begins to show its teeth. By around 3 in the morning, the core of Arthur's heaviest rainfall is going to be pushing aggressively into Louisiana and Mississippi. And when I say heavy rain, I do not mean the kind of heavy rain that makes your commute annoying. I mean round after round after round of torrential, violent downpours that are going to stack on top of each other for hours without any meaningful break. We are talking about rainfall rates that could reach 1, 2, even 3 inches per hour in isolated spots. Think about what that means for a moment. If you get 2 inches of rain per hour falling continuously for 5 straight hours, that is 10 inches of rain in one location in a single morning. The ground cannot absorb that. The drainage systems cannot handle that. The rivers and creeks and bayous that are already running high from recent rainfall cannot accept that kind of volume without overflowing their banks and sending water into streets, into neighborhoods, into homes. Flash flooding is, without question, the number one life-threatening danger from Tropical Storm Arthur, and I need you to treat it with the seriousness that it deserves. The phrase that emergency managers use is "turn around, don't drown." It sounds simple because it is simple. If you come upon a flooded road, do not try to drive through it. 6 inches of moving water can knock a person off their feet. 12 inches of moving water can carry away a small vehicle. 2 feet of rushing water can sweep away most cars, trucks, and SUVs. You cannot judge the depth of floodwater from inside your vehicle. You cannot always see the current beneath the surface. Floodwater conceals downed power lines, washed away road surfaces, and debris that can trap or damage your vehicle in seconds. If you see water over a road in the coming days, turn around. Every single time, no exceptions. Now let us talk about the wind threat, because beyond the flooding, Arthur is packing a wind punch that is going to cause serious damage and widespread power outages across a large area. Tonight into tomorrow morning, tropical storm force wind gusts of 40 to 60 miles per hour are expected across southern Louisiana. As the storm pushes east through the day tomorrow, those gusty conditions are going to spread into southern Mississippi and southern Alabama. 40-mile-per-hour wind gusts might not sound catastrophic, but combine them with rain-soaked, saturated ground, and you have a recipe for trees coming down. Root systems that would normally hold a tree firmly in place become undermined when the soil around them is completely waterlogged. Trees that have stood for decades can topple over with far less wind than it would normally take. And when trees fall, they fall on power lines, on cars, on rooftops, and sometimes on people. Please take this seriously. As we move into Thursday evening and overnight, the wind threat shifts eastward into Georgia and South Carolina. And this is where the storm's post-tropical strengthening is going to become very evident. Model data is showing 40-mile-per-hour wind gusts from Greenville and Spartanburg over toward Pickens and Oconee counties in upstate South Carolina. Augusta, Georgia is being flagged for potential 50-mile-per-hour gusts as some of the stronger embedded storms move through. The Charlotte metro area and Columbia are going to see that wind threat ramp up during the overnight hours as the low pressure itself continues to deepen and strengthen. Then, by early Friday morning, some of the strongest winds associated with this entire system are going to be ripping along the South Carolina and North Carolina coastlines. Beach communities and barrier islands could see sustained winds combined with gusts reaching 50 to 60 miles per hour just offshore. The Outer Banks of North Carolina, communities from Beaufort to Oak Island, from Hatteras to Manteo, from Ocracoke to Kill Devil Hills, and Kitty Hawk, all of these areas are going to be dealing with a very serious wind and wave event on Friday. Rip currents are going to be extremely dangerous. High surf is going to be making beaches unsafe. If you have a beach trip planned for this Friday, please understand that conditions are going to be very rough, even if the sun happens to be shining by the afternoon. But here's the threat that I am most concerned about. Here's the part of this storm that deserves your absolute undivided attention. The tornado threat from tropicals. Storm Arthur is real, it is significant, and it is growing with every new round of model data. Tropical systems are notorious for spawning tornadoes, and the reason is something that many people do not fully understand. When a tropical system moves on shore, it brings with it an incredibly powerful low-level jet stream of wind very close to the surface of the Earth. This low-level wind shear, the difference in wind speed and direction between air near the ground and air just a kilometer or two above the ground, is exactly what causes rotation in thunderstorms. The tornadoes that spin up from tropical systems are typically not the massive long-track wedge tornadoes you might picture from a violent plains outbreak. They tend to be smaller, they tend to be brief, but they are absolutely capable of causing significant damage, and they are extremely dangerous because they can develop with very little warning, and they often occur at night. Tonight, the primary tornado threat is focused near New Orleans and spreading into parts of southern Alabama and Mississippi. Tomorrow, that threat expands significantly. Southern Louisiana, southern Mississippi, and southern Alabama are all going to be in the crosshairs for tornadic activity during your Thursday. But the area I am watching most closely, the sleeper candidate, the dark horse in this severe weather setup, is the corridor running from the Atlanta metro area through Augusta into upstate South Carolina, including Greenville and Spartanburg, and extending toward the western Midlands and low country of South Carolina. Here is why this zone concerns me so much. During the daytime hours on Thursday, that region is going to experience significant atmospheric destabilization as the sun heats the surface and moisture surges northward ahead of the storm. Then, as evening and overnight arrive, that low-level wind shear I mentioned is going to kick in aggressively over the same area. You get daytime heating building up thunderstorm fuel, then you get a surge of low-level spin arriving after dark. That combination is a dangerous one. Tornadoes from setups like this are particularly threatening because they happen at night when people are asleep and not watching weather alerts. Your phone needs to have weather warnings enabled. A weather radio in your bedroom is not a bad idea. You need to have a plan for where you will shelter in your home if a tornado warning is issued in the middle of the night. Even parts of North Carolina, including areas near Charlotte and pushing toward the Piedmont, are being flagged on the newest model runs for an elevated tornado threat during the Thursday overnight into Friday. Morning time frame, the coastal regions of the Carolinas will see that tornado threat shift eastward by Friday morning. This is a widespread, serious, multi-state tornado threat that is going to require vigilance across an enormous geographic area for an extended period of time. And now for the number that should make every single person in the storm's path sit up straight. Rainfall totals. The latest high-resolution model data is showing double-digit rainfall totals across parts of southern Mississippi, southern Alabama, and into portions of southern Georgia. 10 inches, 11 inches, 12 inches. In isolated spots across southern Mississippi especially, we could be looking at rainfall totals approaching 15 inches before Arthur is finished with the region. 15 inches of rain. That is more than some cities see in an entire season. A widespread half-foot of rain across southern Alabama is essentially guaranteed at this point. That is not a possibility, that is a near certainty. And that half-foot of rain is going to turn roads into rivers, fill underpasses to dangerous levels, overwhelm culverts and drainage systems, and push rivers well above their flood stages. As the storm pushes eastward into Georgia and then into the Carolinas, the rainfall totals become more isolated and more variable, but pockets of very heavy rain are still going to occur. The Charlotte metro area, Columbia, areas between Interstate 85 and Interstate 20, all of these zones are going to see periods of heavy rainfall during the Thursday overnight and into Friday morning. The exact distribution of the heaviest totals in the Carolinas is still somewhat uncertain, but isolated amounts of several inches are possible in localized areas. The corridor between I-85 and I-20 currently looks like the best candidate for the higher-end totals in the region. There is also a secondary concern that extends well beyond the immediate path of Arthur. A powerful cold front is currently diving southward from the north, associated with a separate severe weather outbreak that is ongoing right now across the Great Lakes region down through Missouri and into parts of the Ohio Valley. That frontal boundary is going to collide with the tropical moisture being pushed northward by Arthur, and that collision is going to squeeze out enormous amounts of additional precipitation and enhance severe weather potential along the boundary. Tomorrow, a level 2 out of 5 severe weather threat exists across parts of the Northeast, the Hudson Valley, the Philadelphia region, Washington, D.C., and into portions of New England and the Ohio Valley. This is a secondary but real severe weather threat happening simultaneously with the tropical disaster unfolding to the south. The Mid-Atlantic and Northeast need to be watching for damaging wind gusts and isolated tornado potential tomorrow afternoon and evening, particularly if the atmosphere is able to destabilize sufficiently after the morning storms clear through. From the Texas Gulf Coast to the barrier islands of North Carolina, from the Mississippi Delta to the upstate of South Carolina, from the Florida Panhandle to the Piedmont of North Carolina, tropical storm. Arthur is going to leave a mark on this region that people are going to be talking about for a very long time. Flash flooding that could rival historic events. Tornadoes spinning up in the darkness without much warning. Damaging wind gusts knocking out power to potentially hundreds of thousands of homes. Rainfall totals that seem almost impossible until you are standing in the middle of them watching the water rise faster than you thought possible. This is the moment to act, not tomorrow morning. Not when the rain starts, right now. Check your emergency supplies. Make sure you have enough food and water to sustain yourself and your family for several days without power. Charge every device you own. Know your evacuation route if you live in a flood-prone area. Put your important documents in a waterproof bag. Sign up for your local emergency alert system. Turn on your phone's wireless emergency alerts. Have a plan. Have a backup plan. And above all else, when the warnings come, and they are coming, take them seriously. Your life is worth more than any flooded road you could ever cross. Arthur is only getting started. The worst of this is still ahead. Stay informed, stay safe, and do not underestimate what this storm is capable of doing.